So while I do my makeup, I figured we'd talk just a little bit about love and what my understanding of love always was, slash, what it kind of evolved to be. Someone asked me this question in my course recently during one of our live Q&As, and it was such a good question that I felt like, why not discuss it here? So basically, this person said, what do you think true love looks like in the context of a relationship? In answering that question, I realized that for a long time, my definition of true love was very different than what it is now. Like, I am the first to admit that when it comes to dating, I have been very, very fortunate. Like, my first relationship, the guy was a good guy who really deeply cared for me, and that kind of set the tone for kind of my standards and my boundaries. And so anyone I dated after that really had to either match or exceed that. And I also credit sort of my experiences to just having a good example at home. So I can acknowledge that I had an advantage when it came to love and relationships because I just knew what to look for. I heard someone share an analogy that was really powerful about how to know something is real, right? And he said that in a bank, when they're training tellers how to identify the counterfeit, they don't put them around a bunch of fake $100 bills. They make them closely examine for hours on end the real thing. And he said, you don't get good at spotting the counterfeit by studying the fakes. You get good at spotting the counterfeit by getting very well acquainted with what the real thing looks like. And I feel like that is a serious bar and helps to explain where a lot of my love and relationship knowledge comes from. So that's just answering that question for people who always ask. I also have to admit that like I've benefited from learning from women who were older than me and had experiences earlier than me and could kind of speak to different experiences that I was having. As women, one of our best tools and our advantages used to be our networks and used to be like the information that we could share amongst ourselves. Like, hey, that guy's not good news, stay away from him. Or hey, that guy is a good guy, like, but he has XYZ tendencies. Those are things that I feel like have gotten lost in recent times. So I've spoken about this a little bit before, how I took a long period of intentional singleness. My period of intentional singleness was about 5 years, which I didn't know was going to be that long when I started, but I'm grateful for every second of that time because I'm definitely not this woman if I didn't take it. That being said, before and like right after I came out of that period of intentional singleness, I had a very different conception of what true love looked like. I'm not even gonna lie. Like I said, there were definitely parts of it that I had a really strong understanding about, like, for example, respect, consistency, loyalty, integrity, honesty. All of those things I feel like are part of the equation and can't be substituted. For a large part of my like early 20s and even coming right out of that period of intentional singleness in my late 20s, even with all the advantages that I had, there was still so much to learn when it came to what true love looked like inside of the relationship. I feel like it's one thing to observe outside, and it's another thing to observe from the inside, and it's still another thing to have a relationship outside of the context of undergrad. I'm sure everyone who's been through undergrad and is now in the real world can understand what I mean by that. I feel like for the longest time in my 20s, I really looked at the gestures when it came to evaluating whether a man was invested in me, right? Like dinners, gifts, trips, all of those are the kind of things I looked for to determine whether or not a man was actually into me. And as important as all that is, I feel like even then, on some level, I knew that there had to be more to it. Whenever I've spoken about the great experiences I've had in prior relationships, without fail, at least one or two women comments and says, if it was so great, why didn't you marry him? Like, why wouldn't you marry a guy like that? And I mean, I have two answers for that. First of all, are you going to marry the first guy who's nice to you and treats you well? Because if I did, I'd be married at 19, and that was a no for me. Secondly, like on some level, even though I knew that these guys cared deeply about me and they were great guys, I knew that when it came to the kind of love that can sustain a lifetime connection, there had to be more to it than just dinner and gifts and trips. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it then, to be honest, but I've figured it out recently. So like I said, hear me loud and clear. I am not in any way saying that all of those things don't matter or that you shouldn't want those things. 100%. Like, I'm still all about baby girl treatment, princess treatment. Like, I love it. But I'm realizing that true love has so many more and deeper dimensions to it. One of the things that stands out to me now that I never really saw in my prior relationships is I was always with guys who treated me really well, did all the things, the gestures, the dinners, the gifts, all the things that you can possibly think of when you think soft life. For the first time, I'm realizing that there's an element of true love that transcends all that, and that has to do with an investment in who you are as a person. And in order to have that investment be genuine and true, there has to be a level to which that person sees you for who you really are, beyond the facade, beyond the persona, beyond all of that. And like I said, I don't have anything bad to say about my exes, but I can't say that any of them had the same level of attention to who Fumi is on the deepest level, like on a spiritual level almost. Not just who I am, but also where is she going? Like, that level of investment is new. In the moment, I didn't know what the missing piece was. I just knew that something was missing. But now that I've seen it, it's like you can't ever go back. And it's honestly why I spend so much time talking about healing and talking about, taking time and intentional singleness and talking about learning how to become your best self. It's why I spend so much time making that content, because when it comes to finding the right person, none of the tactics that people are selling to you online is going to cut it. When it comes to the nitty gritty of building a lifelong connection with someone, how to make him obsessed with you, how to get him to do this, how to get him to do that, none of that matters. What matters is who you are as a person, the work that you've done to heal, and the habits that you've developed in the way of self-nurturing, processing your emotions, getting in touch with your convictions. For me, that involves prayer. For me, that's very centered around God. Whatever your process is, that needs to be down pat before you can have any sort of long-lasting, intimate connection with someone. Because guess what? If you think dating around with all these guys who couldn't care less about you and is hard, the real challenge comes when you're sitting across from someone who actually sees you, who actually sees your soul, who actually sees past your shell, and there's nowhere to hide. There's no games. There's no running away. That arm's length distance you're able to keep with other people just won't exist here. And then everything you didn't heal from, everything that you swept under the rug, everything that you kind of just chalked up to, that's just how I am, that's just the way it's always been, all of that comes to the surface. And if you haven't done the work to deal with it, you're going to have to deal with it then. And the sad thing is, not every relationship survives that. So the best thing you can do, and I know people are tired of hearing it, but it's true, the best thing you can do while you're waiting for your Mr. Right to show up is to make sure that you're doing the work to become Mrs. Right. That involves learning about intimacy and relationships. Particularly, I do think everyone can benefit from intentional singleness. It also involves learning from the mistakes of others instead of waiting to make your own. I've spoken a fair amount about taking a period of intentional singleness and how that's kind of helped me with my journey and how much I believe in it. I truly believe that it is such a powerful tool for women, especially just because It helps you learn to take your relationship status off the pedestal. We are so conditioned to put so much weight on who we're dating, who we're not dating, who we're talking to, who wants us, who doesn't want us. And if you date with that mentality and that socialization and that conditioning, that's what keeps you like having these negative experiences and not even being able to leave, because you put your relationship status above your own emotional well-being and self-care. You may not do so consciously, but on a subconscious level, you have elevated your relationship status above your happiness. It's more important for you to be able to say that you're in a relationship. It's more important for you to be able to post your relationship and your Valentine's Day and all of that than it is for you to actually be happy and fulfilled in your life and in your love. And I'm not one of those people who says you need to get to a point where you don't even want a relationship anymore in order to find a good one. I don't believe in that. When I was single, I was never one of those people who said to myself, oh, I don't want a man, I don't need a man. No, I always stayed true to the fact that I wanted a man. And for the life and family that I wanted for myself, a man was required the same way eggs are required for cake. The first time I talked about that, a lot of women got really offended by the fact that I said, I would never say I don't need a man. And listen, if you want to say you don't need a man, more power to you, babe. Like, I wish you all the best with that. But for me, that wasn't something that I was going to speak over myself, because I knew, like I said, that just like you need eggs to make a good cake, I needed a man, not just any man, a God-fearing man who is honorable and consistent and has integrity and who lives what he professes. I need one of those for the life and the family that I want and I'm believing for. This stuff, amazing. Westman Atelier in the shade, is it Super Loaded? And I really like it because it's like a more subtle highlight than the one that I had been using on my nose. And that I really appreciate, because I feel like the one I was using was a little bit too much at times, but this one is like perfect. I feel like one of the hardest things to do when you really want something and it seems like it's so far out of reach is to continue to admit to yourself that you want that thing. And I have been there, trust me. There were periods where like I was dating and I just felt like, oh my gosh, does this guy even exist? Like, what am I doing? And I would go through periods of, I'll just take my mind off of it. I'll just do this. I'll just do that. And it helped for some time, but after a while, I feel like you have to admit to yourself that you're not being honest. Another thing that helped me a lot while I was dating and not finding anybody and getting kind of frustrated is I would be happy for other people. Like, I actually kept a journal, or not a whole journal, but I dedicated a portion in my bullet journal to what I called like God winks. And these were just moments where someone I knew got engaged or someone I knew got married. And I would write that down in that book as a reminder to myself that like, okay, this is happening for people. People are finding love every day. The fact that this is still happening for people means that it can happen for me one day. What a lot of people do when they're in this space is instead of being happy for other people, they turn into haters. They tell themselves, oh, there has to be a catch. All men cheat. They start looking for holes. They start looking for negativity and drama. They just don't allow themselves to see the positive in anyone's situation. Everything on social media is fake. That doesn't exist. No one has that kind of money anymore. And here's the thing, when you allow yourself to fall into that trap, you're not changing the reality of the people that you're hating on, and you're not changing the reality of the person that you're kind of like having this negative inner narrative about. All you're doing is limiting your own beliefs, which in turn limits your possibilities. And like I said, none of this came naturally to me at all. I had to learn it. But in learning it, I'm sharing it with you guys. So hopefully you can get to where I am now faster than I did. So every time I would see an engagement, a proposal, like something that I knew that I wanted, I would take time to write it down in this journal of winks. And I would say the date, I would say today so-and-so got engaged. Their photos were so beautiful. They look so happy. Or I would write today so-and-so got married. She looks so happy. Like I remember when she was telling me about her frustrations with finding the right guy, and now she's happily married. Now she's happily engaged. That means it can happen to me too. I literally used to write stuff like this down in my journal. I'm going to look for it and actually try and show it to you guys. And I'm telling you the truth, no more than a year after I started doing this, my person found me. Now, I don't like sharing things like that because then people take it and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go get a journal right now and do it. And then if in a year you don't meet your person, you get really angry and you think I lied or something like that. Everything has to do with the timing of your life, right? You may be a year out, you may be 2 years out. I don't know what your timeline is. All I'm saying is the best thing you can do is not hinder yourself by being negative about other people's lives and experiences. I'm gonna wear my hair straight because I just washed it. I'm officially team sew-in. Now, don't get me wrong, I still do have a couple ladies that will make an appearance, like my bohemian water wave. I call her Layla. She's got to make an appearance sometime soon. You know, there are definitely my numbers that are still going to be in rotation, but as for my go-to style from now on, it's going to be a sew-in for me. Sew in me, please. Now, I'm paying special attention to my brows because of the lip color that I'm gonna do today. But my advice to you is to just try what I've said. When you go on social media and you're looking at everyone's posts and you're looking at everyone seemingly getting the love that you have always wanted. I can't talk and do this. Rather than allow yourself to fall into the trap of being envious and negative, hating on that person, projecting negativity onto that person, be encouraged. My brother put it really well recently when I was having this conversation with him, because I was telling him, like, I don't get why people get angry when other people have things that they don't have yet, because it's like the fact that you don't have it is not their fault. And he was like, plus, like, a really great way to think about it is there was a point in their lives where they didn't have it either, but now they do. And so you can just tell yourself, like, in as much as you don't have it now as badly as you want it, just like that person wasn't born with that dream job. They weren't born with that, great school on their resume. They weren't born with that great partner. They had to go through a process to get it. Just remind yourself, like, you'll go through your process and get what's meant for you. I love this flat iron. I've had it for almost 10 years now. And the way she performs still to this day, like, yes, Bioionic. They also make the best hair dryer I've ever had, but it broke. It just died one day. That did not last nearly as long as this flat iron. I don't know if it was a fluke or what, but... So last but not least, we're going to spray my face so that all of this can, like, deliquids, what I call deliquids. Even if you don't get the application right, I feel like this setting spray does something to, like, blend it all together. I feel like I want my lip to be, like, a little bit more red. Like, not this wine color, but something a little bit more. I'm trying to see from my MAC lipstick collection what color. Yeah, that did the trick. Sultry, giving, you can give eyes with this look, like.
We the children of light, and we will never let